Hello everyone, welcome back to CS Netflix. In this video, we'll be discussing about the dirty read problem which might occur during concurrent transactions. In the previous video, we discussed about the asset properties which will try to avoid concurrency issues to the maximum during your concurrent transactions. But still there are problems that might occur, and one such problem is your dirty read problem, which we'll be discussing in this particular video. So stay tuned. Let us start with an example here. We can see there are two transactions, T1 and T2. So the main concept, in very simple words, if I have to tell you what is dirty read, it is nothing but before any commit operation is performed, the other transaction is trying to read the data, and the data is not permanent changes that have been made. The data is a temporary data. So any other transaction is trying to use that temporary data is nothing but a dirty read problem. So here, as you can see, there is no commit operation performed in this transaction, but after that what it is doing, T2 is trying to access the data and it is again trying to make the changes. So here T2 is reading. Here T2 is reading before T1 could commit its transaction. Yes, so which means T2 is operating only on temporary changes made by the transaction T1. So that is your dirty read problem. So let us see from the beginning how this dirty read is going to occur. Now transaction T1 and T2 both are operating on the same data item A, and since transaction T1 is starting earlier, let us see how these operations on T1 are being performed. First, R is reading the data, which will be 100. Next, it is deducting rupees 50. Okay, 50 rupees have been deducted. Now write operation has been performed, which is that rupees 50, which is the balance amount, is being reflected into A's amount. Now it is being reflected into A's amount, but the changes are only made for temporary. Okay, the changes are made temporarily. It is not, these are not the permanent changes, because there is no commit operation after your write operation on A. Now in the meantime, what happens, before T1 could commit, T2 is resuming its operation, its transaction, by reading the uncommitted data. Yes, this is nothing but your dirty read problem. T2 is reading uncommitted data from T1, so that is your dirty read problem. Now T2 is reading the data, uncommitted data, so the temporary changes which have been made are reflected. So rupees 50 has been reflected onto A's account. Now T2 is acting on rupees 50. T2 is performing the operations on rupees 50. Now since the T2 transaction has started, now it will read A, which is a dirty read obviously, and now the value of A is, as we know, it is 50. It will deduct rupees 25 from A's account, and now it is writing back. Okay, so this is writing, the remaining will be 25 rupees, correct? And now what it is doing is, it is also committing the transaction. It is also committing the transaction, which means commit operation is performed here, and T2 is trying to save the data permanently. Now there is one thing that happen or occur here is the consistency issue. Now T2 has committed the data, and as we can see, now 25 rupees is the balance which will be showing in A's account. Fine. Now what happens is, before T1 could commit, a failure is occurring here. T2 has committed, fine, but before T1 could commit, failure has been occurred here. Now what we have seen in atomicity property, whenever a failure is occurring before the commit transaction, we are going to roll back those particular operations. Fine. So what we will do is, T1 will try to roll back its operations. So initially A had started with rupees 100. So when we roll back, A should be back with rupees 100, right? But that doesn't happen. Let us see how. Now A has how much account in its account now? Permanent data which is being showed in his account is rupees 25. Yes, rupees 25 is being showed in A's account. Now when we roll back T1, transaction T1, what T1 will do? It will try to undo the operation, which is A equals to A minus 50, which means it is going to add those 50 rupees to A. So it will add rupees 50 to A, but then as you can see, the final answer is rupees 75. But the data item A initially started with 100, right? And when we roll back the operation, we are not getting 100 rupees back, we are getting 75 rupees back. And how did this inconsistency occur? Because T2 performed dirty read. Because T2 performed dirty read, this inconsistency occurred. If at all T2 wouldn't occur here at all, if at all transaction T2 wouldn't occur and the failure would have occurred here itself before T2 could start, the data, the amount in A's account would be still 50, and if it would add 50 to it by rolling back from here, the amount would be 100, correct? So that is the problem of dirty read, wherein whenever a transaction tries to read uncommitted data, it will try to arise inconsistency issues. So that is the basic concept of dirty read. So what is dirty read? Dirty read is nothing but, dirty read occurs only when one transaction is trying to read the data that has been modified by another transaction which is running concurrently but it has not yet committed. So here T1 had not yet committed and then T2 tried to perform the read operation. So that is your dirty read problem. So I hope the concept of dirty read is clear now with this. So if you like my video, then do like, share the video as much as possible, and don't forget to subscribe to CS Netflix. And thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video in which we'll be discussing about more problems which are going to arise because of the concurrent transactions.